Welcome back to the 13th Destiny podcast. This is episode 2, part 2 of Urban Legends and my personal ghost story. So as I left you at the end, I was talking about how I wasn't afraid of anything, having worked in security, loss prevention, private investigation, and things like that over the years. As I said, I stopped being scared a long time ago. But it doesn't mean that there aren't times that you kind of have a shaky moment and kind of to have your doubts, like what's going on, what's really happening right there. So that is what I will finish up about. As I am telling my own personal ghost story of this particular building, I'm also going to add in a story that happened with a very good friend of mine who used to be a manager there that moved to Georgia. And I'm still really good friends with her and her husband. So the thing is, I said I'm not going to name any names, and I'm probably not going to name her name. Although, if I named her, she probably wouldn't care about this particular story because she's one of those people that would back me up. But I've said enough about who she is right there that anyone that knows us or follows my Facebook or follows where I go on travels and stuff will probably figure out who she is, especially since I said that she now lives in the state of Georgia with her husband. A place that I actually lived, not in that particular town, but in the state for 8 years myself, even though, as I said, I am from Kentucky here. So, back to this particular story, that what happened on the Thanksgiving night that I was by myself. Again, the boredom, as I said, is horrible in these particular things when you're by yourself, and especially in that particular setting, because in that setting it's not one of those settings where you're sitting in a guardhouse or anything like that. This literally is a place that when there are people there, you are interacting with them on a regular basis, so it makes it a little bit more difficult when you end up being by yourself, and boredom there is always the killer for everything anyway when you're alone. So what happened was that I had turned off the music and I was kind of like just really kind of bored, and I decided I would just walk around the buildings, and you kind of do that anyway, but sometimes you did, and sometimes you just monitored with the cameras, and you didn't take the patrols. But on this particular time, being as bored as I was, I decided, you know what, I'm just going to go do a patrol. And I'm going to walk around even though there's nobody around. And, just kind of see if there's anything unusual. And I'm not talking about unusual about the ghosts, because I wasn't looking for that. I was looking for things related to the field that I was in. Something that maybe somebody missed or something was going on. More of a, mischievous things, criminal activity, stuff like that maybe something we just missed, just, because things like that happen in that particular setting from time to time. And so, I was just kind of looking for that kind of stuff, just to, have something maybe to write up or, not that I'm out there was pushing for that, because I learned a long time ago it's better not to have anything to happen than it is to have some things to happen. But if you never do anything, it also looks like you are not never really doing anything. So I decided to take this patrol, and I'm walking around, and I decided to walk, and I'm walking on this particular patrol, and I get to the old building that I was talking about, that this particular story that I told you on the first half that I never could get solid evidence about, I tried, trust me, I tried to get solid evidence beyond the people telling me the story, because I can't just go on that story. I needed more evidence of anything like that actually really happening. You can tell me all day long that this story happened the way it happened, but I'm also of a nature of having, someone get evidence, because that's the kind of fields that I worked in. We needed the evidence. If you don't have the evidence, it's hard to prove something. And now in this particular case, the evidence is all from me on this part of the story, and then I'll add in the other part of the story with my friend from Georgia who used to be a manager there before she moved back to Georgia and married her husband, who I'm also a very good friend with. So at this thing, I'm just walking around, and when you're by yourself, you hear noises to start with. But this is where it begins to get a little weird. So I'm in the old building and I'm walking around, and I swear to you, I hear something, and I'm like, okay, who else is here? And I'm like, okay, again, like I said, I wasn't really scared per se, but I was kind of shaken to the point of like, who's in this building that's not supposed to be here? Who is in here with me? That is more of a fear of what you're dealing with, not that you're in fear in general. You just like, okay, you just got to be prepared for what you're dealing with. And so I turn around, and I swear that I thought I heard someone. And I looked, and there's no one around. So at this point, I'm just like, okay, you're just hearing things. It's just the creepiness of an old building. You're hearing things. And so I just keep walking. And suddenly, I hear, where are you going? And I'm like, uh-oh. This is weird. This voice literally said, where are you going? Okay. So now I'm thinking that I have someone who has gotten into the building somehow and is messing with me, or is planning to do something. So now I'm going to have to try to find this person. And it was a light female voice, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to find you. So I turned around, and being the type of person that I am, and some people know this, I literally just start calling this out, like, hey, all right, wherever you are at, you need to show yourself, identify yourself, tell me where you're at. And everything went quiet. And I'm like, what is going on? So I'm walking back in the direction of where I thought this voice was at and coming from. And in that area where I'd walked back to, there's a break room, and there's a restroom area, and of course there's I'm trying to think, there's some, there's two particular areas that you can go down one side of the building, and on the other area you can go down the other side of the building, and so it's kind of like in an L shape. So I'm just like, where is this voice coming from? Who's in here with me? And how did they get in here? Okay, that's I'm by myself, so but I'm not going to make a phone call to the police department or something like that there's somebody in here, unless I know there's somebody in here, because it just makes me look bad in a situation like that. And there had been a previous situation where a radio had been, but you can tell when the radio's left on, and it was low enough that you could still hear distinct stories, and or broadcast stuff like that. And this wasn't what was going on. This particular situation was totally different. And I'm like, okay, this is weird. This is very weird. And of course, now by this point, I had been told some of these stories about the ghost activity, stuff like that. So in my mind, I'm going, okay, so am I experiencing one of these weird situations that I've been told about? And I'm like, maybe, don't know for sure. So it was just, again, very weird. I am the person that has to determine whether or not this is real, or if it's just something else, and what is going on. And again, I'm not really scared. I'm just wondering what I'm dealing with. And not knowing what you're dealing with is never really, as long as I had done that, was not really being scared, but it was more of a, what's the situation I'm about to walk myself into. So I walked down this particular side of the building, and again, it all went quiet. and I'm thinking, okay, I'm just hearing things. My imagination is working overtime, and because I've heard these other things, and I'm like, so I start walking back towards the other building, and all of a sudden, I'm about halfway down this other side of the building, and I hear it again. This is a totally different location. Too far away for it to be a radio or anything like that. So it's either got to be a person that is actually in the building, or it has to be something else. And the something else was beginning to bother my mind very badly. Again, not really feeling fear, but feeling kind of like, what am I dealing with? What exactly am I dealing with? And literally, it said it again. It said, where are you going? And I'm like, okay, that's weird. It's just weird the way she's saying it. And it's a female voice. And that's another thing. I'm the only person at this time in this building. There's no one working. There's no one doing anything. There's no machinery running. There's nobody coming in that's supposed to come in. And I'm like, okay, so, alright, so that's the way this is gonna go. Again, I turn around, and at this point, I'm just kind of like looking around. I see nothing. Now, had this only happened once was one thing, but at this point, it's twice. And I'm very concerned at this point, going to myself, what is going on tonight? And by this time, it's about, if I remember correctly, it's somewhere between 12:30 and 1:30 in the morning when this was going on. I don't remember the exact time to this day. Maybe I should have taken notes or something, but I think I was so freaked out. And again, not fearfully freaked out, just freaked out in general. Like this was going on, and all this activity I'd been told about. Now all of a sudden I'm experiencing something weird, and a few people know about this because I've talked to a few people about it, but only people that up to this point that I really trusted. So I'm like, okay, so that's twice, no big deal. So I'm walking back, and I'm getting closer to the other building, and I stopped at what's called a connector, and I'm like, oh, wow, okay, so, alright, it's just my imagination. It's got to be my imagination. It's just, I'm here alone, I'm hearing things because I've heard all these other things, and I'm trying to downplay it in a way, in my own brain, but it was just one of those things that just bug you, and it's just, and so I go back and I check in, see how everything's going, and I sit down and I'm just like, okay, that's really weird. I'm just not going to bring this up, to anybody in general at that time. I think I talked to one person about it, and then later I talked to the manager that was my friend, that moved to Georgia later after she married her husband, who also experienced some weird things there, and so I'll get to that, bringing her up in about this. And okay, so nothing goes on for about, 30, 40 minutes, and I get up and I go to get something to drink. I come back, I sit down, and this is when it gets the fan with me. I'm just like, whoa. I literally, at the same time, I'm hearing, where'd you go? Not where are you going, but where'd you go? And I'm like, what? What is going on? And I looked on the video at the time that this happened, and I swear to you, I saw a figure on the video in the other building for just a brief second. I thought, well, I have the ability to run this back. So I ran this video back, and I'm like, there's nothing there. I swear I saw it. I know I saw it. And it was like a female figure. And it was just so brief and so quick. And yet, I swear I saw it on the video. And yet, when I ran the video back, there's nothing there. I'm like, what is it going on? What is my mind doing to me? my mind's playing tricks on me or something. I'm just like, this just can't be. But at this point, this is on the third time that something has happened on this particular night. And I apologize for the noise. I did not expect anyone to be outside the studio at this time of night. So my apologies on that. Moving on. So anyway, at this particular incident, I'm like, again, I'm not scared. I'm just freaked. I'm just like kind of looking around, thinking to myself, my mind has literally been lost or something. But having the type of friends I had and knowing things about paranormal stuff, I feel like, well, maybe there's more to this. Maybe there's a lot more to this. So now these stories are beginning to like resonate with me, and I'm like, because it's happening to me. It's happening to me, and I'm like, weird. I mean, I just wasn't expecting, to actually experience anything myself. But again, until tonight, I didn't really bring a lot of that up, except with a couple of people who had experiences themselves, including the manager that I will bring up in a minute, because she had a very unique experience shortly thereafter about this, which led me to be telling her about this incident that happened a few days before hers. To this day, I couldn't tell you what happened, because after I tried to run the video and I found nothing on the video, it was like everything just stopped, and I'm like, what happened? What's going on? And I can't prove this by any stretch of the imagination, so you're just going to have to take my word that this happened. But it was weird, and I will admit it was weird. So, and I didn't talk a lot about it back then, because I was just kind of like, okay, don't really know what happened there. Don't know why it happened. And I'm not bringing up, and people that know me know that I talk on a really good basis with a lot of people, but this is one of those things where I kind of just like, okay, kind of could keep this one to myself for a while. And so then my particular friend, who was a manager on the call center at that time, she came in a couple days later, and they were going to leave early, and she told me that, and I said, yeah, no problem. So she ended up being up there alone. And she calls me and she tells me, she says, hey, Magnum, I've got a problem up here. And I said, what is it? And she said, there's something weird going on up here. And I'm like, what do you mean there's something weird going on? And of course now, a couple of days prior to this, I've had my experience, and I'm thinking, oh God, what am I going to hear now? And she tells me she keeps hearing a voice and that she's the only one up there. And I'm saying, well, are you sure something's not turned on? At first I wasn't going to say anything to her, and then it's like, okay, we'd had maybe some minor talks about some things in the past, but not to this level. So she calls me a second time, and she tells me, she said, I need you to come up here. There is somebody up here, and they're not supposed to be up here. And I'm like, there's no one here but me down here and you up there at this particular time that this happened. And she said, I really need you to come up here. And I'm like, okay, I'll be up there in a minute. So I go up there, and she said, I'm telling you, I keep hearing a woman's voice. And I'm like, okay. And she said, look, I'm going home. I am not dealing with this. She said, I'm getting ready to leave. And I told her, I said, okay, well, just to be honest with you, a couple of days ago, when I was here by myself, and completely by myself, ironically, I heard a woman's voice when I was on patrol out in the building, and she's like, what? That's kind of her reaction. And I'm like, yeah, I said, I still haven't been able to prove what was going on. Don't know what's going on. Don't know why it's going on. And then she brings up the fact, she said, well, you've been told time and time again that there's ghost activity here. I'm like, I've been told that, but I've never dealt with it directly until, if that is what it is, the last couple of nights, and now you bringing this up. And she said, well, I'm not staying up here alone. She said, I'm going home. I said, well, I'm still here. I said, she said, I'm finished. She said, I'm going home. And I said, okay, well, that's fine. And this is where I go back downstairs, and she comes down and she waves goodbye, and she said, "I'll see you tomorrow, and there'll be more people here." And I'm like, "Yep, that's true." And she she calls me back on her cell phone from her car, and she tells me this. She goes, "Oh my God, you're not going to believe this." And I said, "Oh, at this point, I'm probably about ready to believe anything." She said, "I'm scared to death right now." I'm like, "What do you mean you're scared to death?" She said, "When I got onto the road and I was driving by the building, I literally saw this woman figure in the window on the second floor. I was the last person to leave, and this woman had long, flowing black hair, and it was like, I'm like, you got to be kidding me." I said, "Are you putting me on?" I thought she was putting me on at first. She said, "Dude, I never put you on, you know that." And I was like, "Oh my God." And she said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "Well, at the particular moment," I said, "I'm probably just crazy enough," and I actually said that, "I'm probably just crazy enough to go to check that out." And she's like, "Are you?" She said, "Are you really that nuts?" And I said, "Well, probably a little bit." I said, "I'm getting tired of trying to figure this out. I'm like, this isn't crazy that we're dealing with this, and it's only homing in on, at this particular time, it was me a couple of nights beforehand, and then it was her on this." And I said, "Look, I'm going to go try to figure this out." So I go into the second floor, and I literally don't see any. And I'm like, again, I'm just that type of person. Okay, so this is kind of my comment. I'm like, okay, so if you're here, go ahead and show yourself. I'm not scared. You can't scare me. Go ahead. It's not that big a deal. And it never showed itself, of course. But my manager friend literally was scared so much. And she'll be honest. I mean, I'm not telling you anything she wouldn't tell you. But she was scared. And I mean, she was literally scared. And I could tell that she was scared. I talked to her about it later, and she said, "There's just too many weird things that go on here." She said, "The chance I get to leave here, I'm leaving." And that chance did come later, and she got married and went back to Georgia. But honestly, something is weird in that building. Something goes on in that building, and it's been like that for a long time, and it just happens from time to time. And it's like it homes in on certain people, and it literally just scares people. And there are people there to this day that will tell you that they have had weird encounters at weird times of the night. Usually it's more of the overnight. I have never heard of anything ever happening during the daytime in that building. So it definitely happens at night. And so that's my personal ghost story. And that is how it went down. And I believe it was some kind of ghost or entity. And my friend in Georgia believes it was some kind of ghost or entity that we were dealing with, especially after she saw the figure in the window. The figure in the window is enough to really put a whole different view on this, both for her, me, and anybody else that's ever experienced something there. There's one other particular person that I know that said that they had experienced stuff there, who also quit working there, so a few years ago. And so there's something there. But that's my personal ghost story. And I hope you've enjoyed it. It's just, that's the way it went down. And again, can't prove or disprove it other than what happened with us. And I hope you enjoyed that story. So anyway, have a great night, and keep enjoying the 13th Destiny podcast with Magnum. And my co-host is currently trying to secure a upcoming guest, and I am also working to secure an upcoming guest as well. On that particular person that I'm trying to get, we're having more of a scheduling issue between me and her, but she is someone that, and I'm not going to mention her right now until I can get a more detailed idea of when we can possibly get her on the show. But she is a paranormal investigator, and she is known to a lot of people, and she is a friend of mine, and I'm also a fan of hers as well, so I'm a fan and a friend. So just wanted to say that we are working on getting more guests on the show. This is all very new to us, and I appreciate the support we've gotten so far from everyone, and I look forward to continuing to do this, and I hope everyone has a great night. And thank you for listening to the 13th Destiny podcast with Magnum, and continue to be watching and listening to our shows. Thank you.